We want to thank the Smithboro ladies for providing the refreshments tonight. So make yourself, avail yourself of those here this evening. You can do so right now if you want. Welcome, John. Let's give him a hand. Thank you.
Good. Well, thank you very much, Carrie. I appreciate that. I also want to thank everyone for coming out tonight. This is really a great turnout, and really do appreciate that. Some old familiar faces, some new faces, so we're really glad to have you all here tonight. I also want to say a big thank you to Dee Tevis. I know Dee helped organize this whenever, every time Dee would see me for probably, the last 10 years, Dee, you've been saying, Dee would tell me, she said, well, why don't you have a meeting over here in Smithboro sometime and do that? And so it took a while, and we finally did make it. Originally we were supposed to have this meeting this past September. And my family, my grandparents lived in the house that was just on the other side of this building for a lot of years. My dad grew up about half of his childhood here in Smithboro. And so I was going to have my dad come to the program and tell a bunch of stories, from his time growing up here. But he passed away a few weeks before we could do this program. So we decided to postpone it until now. So I will try a little bit later on. I'll try to tell some of the stories that I remember, the ones that I can. Let's put it that way. And so we'll do that. But also, a lot of you've hit up. I know you remember my grandmother, Margaret Coleman, was a school teacher here for a lot of years. She taught just about everybody in town. My grandpa, John Coleman, he first came to this town, and I'll talk a little bit more about it in a minute. First came to this town because he was one of the foremen that helped build the bridges here for Route 40. And that was in 1941. The piers that are holding up the bridges, the bridge deck's all been replaced, but the piers that are holding up Route 40 there are still the same piers that he worked on in 1941. So it's kind of amazing. Another quick thing, I'll just also mention, I hope you forgive me if I have to sit down in the middle of this. I had some surgery here a few weeks ago, and I'm on some kind of tough medicine. So yeah. So I hope you won't think it's rude if I have to sit down after a while, but I'll try to stay standing up here. As I was going to say, can we maybe is there a way to turn off some lights here on this end, maybe so you can see a little bit better? It's all or nothing, I guess. All or nothing. Okay, is everyone okay being here in the dark? You all behave yourselves, right? Okay, good. All right, so as it says, welcome to Smithboro, or is it Smithboro with a UGH at the end, or is it Henderson Station? This town has actually been known by all of those, and I'll explain a little bit here. It was founded by Henry Hedrick Smith, and that is his wife, Eleanor Smith. Henry was born in Ohio, one of 10 children. He was a devout Episcopal Methodist, and he originally went to a seminary in Ohio, and I think he was planning on becoming a minister. His father actually had moved to Bond County before he did. His father owned some ground that was out where the Greenville High School is now. And, meant to back a little bit further. There we go. And so anyway, his father and some of his brothers moved out here. And Henry actually left college then when he was a junior to move out here with his parents. While he was out here, he ended up buying 1 square mile of ground, which is around Smithboro. In fact, the depot was actually the center of that kind of 1 mile square. And he had bought it from the Illinois Central Railroad. Now, some of you, and you probably can't see it here in the dark very well, but L.V. Elam's book, she wrote the history of Smithboro here in the 1980s. And she talked about him buying that ground from the Illinois Central Railroad, which was kind of funny, I thought, because I didn't know why he would have gotten it from the Illinois Central Railroad, because the Illinois Central Railroad ran through Vandalia, and it ran north and south. It didn't come over to Bond County. So why did they own ground here? Well, the Illinois Central Railroad was what they called a land grant railroad. It was the very first one in the United States. and they would get 1 mile square parcels of ground on alternating sides along the railroad tracks. And I thought, well, that's interesting, but Smithboro's 15 miles away from Vandalia. Why did they own this ground over here? Well, it was part of the law was that if all of the ground was already taken around the railroad tracks, then they could take another parcel up to 20 miles away. So the Illinois Central took this parcel out here. Well, that was in the 1850s, which Bond County was already pretty well established by then. So you kind of think, well, why was all that farm ground still available out here? Well, it was kind of swamp. This is kind of a low area. The water table is real high out here. The fields were known for flooding out here, so nobody just really wanted the ground out here badly enough, apparently. So that land was still available in the 1850s, and the Illinois Central Railroad bought it. And then in the mid-1860s, Henry Smith ended up buying that 1 mile square of ground from the Illinois Central Railroad. And he set to work trying to develop it. And so probably the best thing is in L.V. Elam's book, she described Henry Smith this way. He was a farmer, stock raiser, trader, college student, station master, postal clerk, creamery owner, cheesemaker, newspaper publisher, coal mine owner, hotel proprietor, philanthropist, real estate salesman, owner of the American Carlsbad Natural Mineral Water Company, was in the fruit drying business, helped make Smithboro the crossroads of 2 railroads, tried to make Smithboro the county seat, was an entrepreneur of the first order, and I expect he could add to the list. So he did a lot. He was a pretty busy guy. He did not stand still. I could definitely add to the list and say that he was also an inventor, and I'll show you that here in just a second. There is Henry and Eleanor standing in front of their house. Their house was just right on this side of this building, just to the north of us here. You may recognize the wrought iron fence that is still there right now. Henry and Eleanor did not have any children, but they did have some nieces and nephews, and everyone knew Eleanor actually by Aunt Nellie. In fact, I think everyone in town, I think, just kind of called her that. When she passed away in 1908, Henry gave that house to the Methodist Episcopal Church of Southern Illinois, and they turned it into kind of a nursing home. And the reason why he did that was because he wanted her and him to be buried in the backyard. And the only way to do that was to actually turn it into, kind of like a public use building. And so the church agreed to that, and they created what they called the Eleanor Smith Memorial Deaconess Home, something like that. And anyway, it wasn't a nursing home for very long. It burned in 1815. I'm sorry, in 1915, that home burned down. So the home that's there now is actually one that was built to replace it, but the wrought iron fence is still there. And Henry and Eleanor are still buried in the backyard. So, if you look in that backyard today, you also see they used to have that kind of wrought iron gate that used to be in front of the house that's called Eleanor Home. And that was kind of the short name for that. And so anyway, they moved that back there to where their gravesite is. After his wife died, Henry moved over to the old hotel building, which is where the convenience store is now. He lived there for a long time until he died in 1917. I think his brother was actually the proprietor of the hotel there. But I told you that Henry was an inventor, and I don't know if you can tell in this picture very well. There's a swing set that's there in the front. Can you all make that out? Okay, well, Henry invented that and actually has a patent for it. So there you go. He got the patent in 1907. So, and I compared the photo and compared the patent drawing, and it matches almost exactly. So I'm not sure exactly what makes that swing so special, but there was something about it that he invented. He also holds another patent for inventing some kind of a stock trough for animals to feed out of. So anyway, Henry, he tried to found the town in the late 1860s. That was the same time that the Vandalia Railroad was trying to build a line between Terre Haute and St. Louis. and they were coming through this area. So what Henry did was he donated the ground for the railroad to go through, gave them the right-of-way in exchange for them to build a depot here. And that was not unusual for the time, and obviously if you wanted to try to create a town, it would be good to have a depot here. So when they first put their first station in, it was actually known as Henderson Station. And there's been some kind of debate about how the name Henderson came up. And I collect a lot of Vandalia Railroad stuff, early documents from them, and I've got a bunch of their employee documents from, it's a list of the men that were working on building the right-of-way when they were coming through Bond County. One of the guys on there, his last name is Henderson. So I don't know for sure if that's how the town or how the station originally got its name. I'm kind of guessing that that's probably the best guess that I have for that. But at least within a few years, it became known as Smithboro. And it was Smithboro with the UGH on the end of it. That is how Henry Smith originally called the town. And so in 1870, he incorporated the town of Smithboro. So there were really